Welcome in again, everybody, to the Marshall Report on the Auburn Undercover podcast with our legendary columnist in residence, Phillip Marshall. Phillip, how you doing today?
I'm good. For an old guy.
Good to be with you today.
Good to be with you as well, always.
So, what we're going to talk about today? We've had a bunch of Auburn coaches since Pat Dye was hired. Actually, before Pat Dye, since Shug was hired, and most of them have had a lot of success, except Bryan Harsin.
Well, I just looked at that earlier today, and in the first 3 years, that's really not so much about Harsin, but sometime in the first 3 years, every Auburn coach, starting with Coach Jordan, has done something significant. Coach Jordan, and he went 5-5 his first year, which was significant because they were coming off an 0-10 record the year before he got there. And then his third year, they were 7-3-1, and that was their first winning season in 11 years. So it's been a little. People think it's bad now. It has been worse. And so that was significant. And then obviously 3 years after that, he won the national championship. And then won another one
per athletic department now.
Right. And then then he was replaced by Doug Barfield, who I think is one of the most unfairly criticized coaches Auburn's ever had, because they had a situation where they and this was especially, it happened to Bryant too, when it comes to a point where the coach couldn't say, okay, yeah, I'm going to be here all the time you're here. It becomes a lot harder, or became then a lot harder to recruit. Probably not as big a deal now, because the player will just think, well, if he leaves, I'll leave too. But and in his third year, he had Auburn's first winning season since '74, and then the next year had an 8-3 season. It just completely fell apart in 1980. And then, of course, came Coach Dye, who won the national championship in his third season, and then won, obviously, 3 more SEC championships. And then came Terry, who won his first 20 games, Terry Bowden. And then came Tuberville, who went to the SEC championship in his second season. And then
in the first season, I mean, if I remember right, there were
first season they were 5-6.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many games he lost on fake punts and fake field goals, but
and then they went to the championship game in 2020. If they hadn't gotten blown out by a 4-win Alabama team at Jordan-Hare Stadium in 2021, they would have gone again. And and then, of course, Chizik won the national championship his second year. Gus played for the national championship, won the SEC championship his second year.
First year,
I meant to say. You're exactly right. And then, of course, Bryan Harsin, who didn't win anything in his 1 year and a half. But I think the moral to that story is that you can win at Auburn. You can win championships at Auburn. But what has not happened since Coach Dye is keeping it going for a period of time. Tuberville came the closest probably from 2004, 2005, 2006. They won like 16 out of 17 SEC games, including the SEC championship game in 2004. But then it started to unravel. And now here we are, and Hugh Freeze obviously has had 2 losing seasons. Just about every one of those coaches had one in that period of time. Coach Jordan did. His second year, he was 2-8. Barfield had 2 or 3, depending on. He actually technically had 3 because Mississippi State had to forfeit a game in 1977, which made that team 6-5 instead of 5-6. They don't do forfeits anymore. They vacate wins now. They don't do forfeits. But at that time, it was a forfeit. The other team won, and Coach Dye was 5-6 his first year. Tuberville was 5-6 his first year. Ironically, the 2 coaches who had winning seasons their first years were Terry and Gene Chizik.
And Malzahn.
And both came to untimely ends. So, the question now is, to me, and I have said that this Auburn program had no margin for error the last 2 seasons. Mistakes, coaching mistakes, execution mistakes, they're not near as glaring when you win. And when you're good enough, you can overcome those things. Well, these last 2 Auburn teams had a very, very small margin for error. And this team has enough players to win. And Hugh Freeze has said that and should win. And I think will win. I think they will definitely. I'll be surprised if they don't have a significantly better season than the last 2. But it's also different now because the league is a bear. I mean, it's just, assuming Auburn beats Ball State Saturday and they beat South Alabama the next Saturday, then it's at Oklahoma, at Texas A&M, Georgia at home.
Rough.
That's pretty rough. That's pretty rough.
But, if you look at the back half of the schedule.
After that, it's not so bad.
Yeah, I mean, let me pull it up here. It's so once you get past Oklahoma, A&M, Georgia, then you've got Missouri at home, at Arkansas, Kentucky at home, at Vandy, Mercer, and Alabama at home. I mean, if you get out of that, if you get out of those first 5 games 4-1,
yeah,
you got a chance to have a really, really special year.
Right. Oh, no question about it. And and who knows what it'll be like in November. And I'm not among those who are saying Alabama's down to the count. We'll see. They might be, but
I think there's a chance. I think there's a really good chance they pull out of it. I also think there's a really good chance they don't.
Right. Well, they got really good players, really talented players, and so we'll see about that. I expect they'll make Louisiana Monroe pay this weekend, but Auburn, the Auburn team I saw Saturday would definitely be favored to beat the Alabama team that I saw Friday. Would definitely be favored to beat the Alabama team I saw Saturday,
and certainly in Jordan-Hare Stadium
at home. That's exactly right. And I think Auburn can beat anybody. That's not saying I think they'll beat everybody, but I think they can beat anybody. I mean, the last time they played at Auburn, they had to Hugh's first year. They had to come from behind in the to win by 7 points, and so I think Auburn can beat anybody. The question is, and this is going to be interesting for a lot of people. As I said, all those coaches had those memorable years, but except for Dye, none of them were able to sustain it. And can you do that now at Auburn? Can you sustain it? Well, I think Auburn's got most everything everybody else has got. And if you can sustain it, is Hugh Freeze the guy to do it? And, I would say that no matter who the coach is. We'll see, but it needs to start this year, because if it doesn't start this year, and I'm convinced that he was always going to get 4 years. I think there's very little question about that, barring some kind of total meltdown, which I certainly don't see happening. Can he sustain it? Can he be in the conversation? You're not going to win it. You're not going to win a championship every year, but can they be in the conversation most years? That's the question to me. And of course, the problem being a college head coach is that once you've done it for a few years, then you by dang better do it every year. And it's tough business. Get rich, but it's tough business.
Well, there's no question. There's no question about that. It's those guys make a lot of money, but even the good, it used to be that the head coaches were making millions and millions of dollars, and they had 5-year contracts, and the assistant coaches were making not nearly that much, without guaranteed contracts, and they're the ones that were moving their families around, and then
when I can remember well. I mean, like when in 1981 when Dye arrived, those assistants weren't making any money. I mean, their wives all had to work.
If I remember, Jimbo, when he got to Auburn, I think I would have to look it up, but I think I remember him telling me he was making in 60 something. I think that sounds maybe it was more than that, but I don't think he was making it.
No, I if it was that much. But one time, a little story at the summer camp, and summer camps used to be just get as many kids as you can and
make money.
It was to supplement money. It was not. They were not what they are now. And somebody broke into something and stole all the camp money. And I asked Neil Calloway, I said, well, did Coach Dye make it good for y'all? He said, hell no, he didn't. He said, he said, we were just out of luck. And, but at that time, you became an assistant coach hoping to be a head coach and make a good living, not necessarily get rich, but make a good living. And
you're right. Camp was up until fairly recently, was used, especially at G5 schools. I mean, I remember when I was working at Southern Miss. I mean, we tripled camp revenue, and the assistant coaches were pretty happy about it, because they got paid, Yeah, I remember, I tell you, when I was at Auburn, I made over $3,000 working camp one summer.
Yeah,
and I got to LSU and I made $2,100 that summer, and then I got to Florida and I made $5,000.
I don't think it's on our list, but since we're talking about former Auburn coaches, how about Gus Malzahn Saturday?
Hey, you know what? I saw he tweeted, feels like old times. And I think that, hey, look, he beat Alabama as much as anybody else. And that's certainly
6 times. That's 6 times he beat Alabama. And once at Arkansas, 4 times at Auburn, and once at Central Florida.
Florida State.
6 times. Not Central Florida, it's Florida State, yeah. And I guess that was, I wondered all along because I thought it was possible that it could be that this is just what he needed to be relieved of the burden of being a head coach, which is a heavy burden.
It is.
And it's hard to be the play caller and the and the head coach. And as lots of coaches have discovered, even Steve Spurrier finally gave it up. But
gave it up and took it back.
Yeah, well, like that sounds like Gus. He took it back he gave it up and took it back about 4 times. Thought it was Auburn.
I thought it was more than that.
And I read a Brandon Marcello, our former guy, did an interview with Gus, I guess on the day after the game, I guess is what it was. And Gus talked to him about being unburdened, about being able to just focus on calling plays, and then between series being able to focus on what you expect to come and what you need to do to deal with it, and how much fun it was and how much more comfortable he was. But I guess the thing that surprised me the most was what he did didn't surprise me, because he ran the same plays he'd been running ever since I've been watching him coach. But Alabama seemed totally baffled by it.
And the strange thing was, if you watch the coaches' press conferences after, they said we didn't see anything that weren't expecting, and which is even a bigger problem.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Gus. He called a great first game, and Florida State looked much better. My question is, can he sustain? And look, the ACC is a different animal than the SEC, and maybe it doesn't matter as much because Florida State's going to have better players than maybe everybody except 2 teams in the league, even after the debacle last year. So, my question is, can he throw it enough?
Well,
can he develop a pass? And maybe Norvell can help him with that. But
so many coaches have told me about Gus when he was at Auburn, even before he was the head coach at Auburn, he was the offensive coordinator, that his passing game is just elementary.
Yeah.
It's basically the same passing game he used at Springdale High School. Mm-hmm. But that his running scheme might be the best out there. Yeah. And that's something people, you think spreading the field, you think throwing the ball 40 times a game, but that's never been Gus.
No.
And he likes to run the ball. But he bamboozled a lot of people. His first year at Auburn, and especially his second year when Cam Newton bamboozled them all. But it got harder and harder. The rules changed, defenses adjusted to it, and it's just like spread offenses everywhere. Just back in the wishbone days, when it first started, people started using the wishbone. You thought, how's anybody ever going to stop that? But they learned how, and they've learned how to deal with playing in space and all that stuff now. And so will it continue steadily? I don't know.
And Gus is one of Gus's proteges. I think that, if you look at Rhett Lashley, who really is Gus's pro,
right.
The one thing Rhett has done is really develop a passing game,
right,
more than Gus did. And so I think you'll see Rhett's a really good guy and a really good coach, and I think you're going to see him be successful for a long time. But one of the keys to that is he's been able to take Gus's running game and put it with a pretty good passing
right.
game.
Exactly. And I really think that's kind of true with Norvell too.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was a Gus protege as well. And and this is a big if with the Gus Malzahn I know, if Gus will let him help, if he will accept that his passing game needs to be more 21st century, then maybe it'll be a great combination. It certainly was a great combination Saturday. However it worked, and I didn't see any sign anybody besides Gus was calling a play. It certainly worked in that game. And Gus Malzahn is a good guy. He's paranoid. He's stubborn, but he's a good guy. And it's hard not to be happy for him after that game because, that outside of beating him when he was the head coach at Auburn, that had to be about as good a day as he's had.
There's no doubt. Let me ask you, you've been around a long time. Who's the best, and we've had an ongoing debate on the message board for the last couple of weeks. Who's the best Auburn game? Who is the best play caller on game day play caller coach that you've watched? Head coach or coordinator?
That's a good question. Probably when he was a coordinator, probably Doug Barfield. And people don't like for you to say Doug Barfield did anything good, but that's how he got the head coaching job. But unfortunately for him, when he got the head coaching job, he didn't have any players left. And but it was kind of a haphazard thing when Coach Dye was there. At first, they didn't even have an offensive coordinator, at least not officially.
When Tommy, they brought Tommy Bowden in,
they brought Tommy in later, and that's the funny thing about that. Coach actually called me at my house in Montgomery. I was at the Montgomery Advertiser, and he said, "I want to let you know we've hired Tommy Bowden to be the offensive coordinator." And I said, that's great. Because I knew Tommy was on Doug's, either first year or second year, he was on Doug's staff. And I had gotten to know him then. So I knew Tommy knew he was a good guy. And Coach Dye said, he told me, he said, he's going to run a tight end, this and that and the other. He said, and I am getting out of it. He said, I'm not going to have anything to do with it. Well, I don't have to ask Tommy if that carried through. we all know it didn't. So, and I think, look, whatever Dye did, he won 4 SEC championships. But he was like some other coaches that, he was a defensive guy. As a coach, he played both ways as a player. But he was a defensive guy, and but he thought he knew offense too. And
so did Brother Oliver.
Oh, Brother Oliver thought he was not only the best defense coordinator ever, he thought he was also the best offensive coordinator ever.
And just ask him
No doubt. No doubt. But or maybe Terry. Maybe Terry until
Al Borges wasn't bad either.
No, though it kind of went a little bit. Even in 2006 when they won 11 games, they were not real good on offense. But yeah, I hadn't even thought of Al Borges. He might be number one. The thing with Terry was when he came to Auburn running basically the offense his daddy had run at Florida State, and he had it was a tremendous combination because he had a hard-nosed Pat Dye team with good players, and then he added a lot of imagination to what they were doing. To me, Terry's I don't know if I want to say downfall, but was when he started to change to try to be well, they called it then a 4-wide team. They didn't call it a spread team. They called it a 4-wide team. And he did it at a time when he had Stephen Davis, who's one of the most talented running backs ever been here.
Right.
And but I would say Borges, Terry, Doug, probably those three. Now, I will tell you, other coaches will tell you that Hugh Freeze is a great play caller.
Hey, and look, Gus Malzahn was a good play caller at times. You look at those first couple of years. I mean,
but he let But I think Gus was really negatively impacted by the new rules. The one thing I saw consistently from Gus, other than I'm giving it up, no, I'm taking it back, I'm giving it up, no, I'm taking it back, was which just about drove from Rhett Lashley to Chip Lindsey to whoever about drove him crazy. But
crazy, not just on offense.
Well, it was the substitution rule. The offense substitutes, the defense has to substitute, and he was just determined to get the very best players on the field to run whatever the play was he was calling, and as a result, the up tempo went out of his up tempo offense because defenses were, as they should have been, slow to respond. They didn't substitute until they had to, and I really think that was a big problem for him. And I didn't watch it closely enough Saturday to know if he was substituting like that or not. But if you're going to run an up tempo offense, you're going to have to run it with the same guys on the field. Whereas before that rule, he could have the players that he needed to put in ready. They could run out there and get in their stance, snap the ball. Mm-hmm. And now you can't do that anymore. And unless the defense lets you, which they're not going to do. And but he obviously did a great job of calling play Saturday. The most shocking thing about that game to me was the Florida State's domination on both sides of the line of scrimmage.
Yeah,
that which makes play calling a lot easier, as we know.
Well, the hard thing about the transition going on at Alabama is, when you go from a coach that's soft, so to speak, to one that's hard. Yeah, that's a hard transition because you're getting guys and you cut guys out and whatever. But if you're going from a place that's where everybody's super disciplined, which is what Alabama was, to now you've got a staff that maybe that stuff works. It's not as tight. It's not as tight a ship now as it was. I know that for a fact.
That's obvious. That's obvious. And
how do you hold those kids? Those kids are used to, they're used to being pinned down, and all of a sudden they've got freedom now, and there aren't those rules and constraints are not in place that were in place with Saban. And
no, and look, let's face it, the players probably like that.
Oh, for sure.
But there's a reason it was like that, and just like with Coach Dye, we talked about him. His players loved him when they were gone. They didn't love him when he was about to kill them out there.
And there's different. You look at Gene Chizik tried to be, a disciplinarian, but he didn't go about it very well. He didn't go about it very well, and it ended up costing him his job.
Darren Bates, I don't know if you remember him, was married and had a baby, and he was not a guy that got into trouble. And around midnight one night, he needed some diapers, or his baby needed some diapers. And so he's going to Walmart to get some diapers. We've all been there.
More than one.
And the security guard told him he couldn't go. He said, "You watch. I'm going to Walmart to get some diapers. If you got a problem with that, I'm sorry, but that's where I'm going." And stuff like that is not the way to have this. That's not the way to have this. But disciplined teams, and look, there's more than one way to be disciplined. I understand that, but I think again, a coach that's only been on the West Coast, never been anywhere else but the West Coast. It's just different, and we'll see if he adapts. That's the question.
Phillip, I think everything I've heard about him is, he's a good guy. He's not Bryan Harsin.
Yeah.
And I think he is he's shown he's a good coach. I just think that the question becomes, and we were talking about this before we came on, Kiffin and Sark had been Southernized. They'd been they'd been baptized in the SEC working for Nick Saban. Kalen DeBoer has not been, and Bryan Harsin certainly had not been. And I don't want to compare those two because I do think
no, it's not fair because, like you said, I don't know Kevin DeBoer, but everything I've heard is he's a really good man.
The same
and
thing.
I'm sure he will try to adapt. I don't have any doubt he will try to adapt. But you are who you are.
Well, I think the other question is in this environment, there aren't any. There's not an SEC network that really matters on the West Coast. There's not a Paul Feinbaum on the West Coast. There's not a, there just aren't. The ecosystem is completely different here than it is out there.
Totally and completely different. And we'll see if he adapts. But here's the thing: if you're not going to adapt, if you say, "This is my personality, and this is who I am," then you better go hire somebody, and to be the bad guy. But we'll see. But when I see what's the left tackle's name that went to Iowa and came back, it's supposed to be the best offensive lineman in the country.
If you hadn't asked me, I told you.
And he just got road graded in that game, and that's just hard to explain.
I know the offensive line coach there. We worked together, and I know him well. I've known him for over 20 years now, or right at 20 years now, and I know he can coach. He's been a coordinator. He's been an offensive line coach. He is widely revered as one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. So it's not that he forgot how to coach. So I'm not sure what's going on there. It makes me wonder if there's not more going on in obviously there's stuff going on internally, or you don't look like you look against Florida State Saturday.
No, that was they looked like an overmatched team.
They did,
and no way should they be overmatched against Florida State, who's got a bunch of guys wearing their uniform for the first time.
Well, in Alabama,
I'm not as convinced as you are about Florida State. I don't know if they're going to be that. I don't know. Of course, everybody always overreacts to the first game. Always.
And I'm not saying that Florida State's going to be great, but we had Ellis Johnson on yesterday, and he really thinks, and he's watched a lot of Clemson, he's watched Miami, and he's watched, and again, it's early in the season, but he said he really thinks, he said Clemson may finish third in the conference. He thinks, and I'm not sure I agree with it. And I'm not sure that look, I mean, Florida State really used the portal well 2 years ago and went undefeated, and used it really, really badly last year. And the question is, I think the same question applies whether it's portal or whether it's now or 20 years ago. If you use too many junior college kids or you use too many portal kids and you don't have enough kids in your program, it's hard to flip it now. I mean, Joe Paterno had some losing seasons and was able to flip it around. But I mean, when you go from 13, 14-0, whatever, 13-1 or whatever it was, and to 2-10, that's a problem. And it's hard to get that fixed. And I'm not sure that's a talent issue as much as it's a.
And we'd move on at this, but I saw a stat the other day that the Kubnik, is that how you say the Clemson quarterback's name?
Cade, is it Klubnik?
Klubnik, yeah. Anyway, he has started against 4 SEC teams, and he has no touchdown passes and 7 interceptions.
I saw that.
And that's the thing that kind of the modern way. Clemson was just average last year. Mm-hmm. I know they went to the playoff, but that was an accident, basically.
Yeah.
So they weren't really good. They weren't great last year. And the quarterback was inconsistent last year. Mm-hmm. And now going into the season, they're number 4 in the nation.
And that's why it makes no sense to do a poll before at least midseason. I mean, nobody knows what these, just like you look at 2004, and it doesn't matter as much now because you got the playoff committee and all that stuff. But, you look at 2004, Auburn goes undefeated, and USC and Oklahoma go wire to wire 1 and 2. I mean, if you have a poll that comes out, week 6, week 7, the first time, maybe that poll looks different, because if you look, I can promise you this. I know USC, glam and all that stuff with Reggie Bush and all that stuff. I mean, but if you really compare the schedule that Auburn played versus the schedule Oklahoma played,
no question, Auburn was definitely better than Oklahoma, in my opinion. Yeah. And I'm not, here's something people don't remember. In that season, Stanford dropped a touchdown pass in the final seconds to beat that would have beaten USC. I mean, just a cold drop. Not he could have called it, or maybe he could have called it. It hit him right in the gut, and he dropped it. And UCLA, who finished 5-6, had the lead until the final 5 minutes against them in that game. They are remembered as just being overpowering, and when they actually weren't. And I think Auburn would have had a good chance against them. They certainly would not have gotten beat 55 or whatever like Oklahoma did.
That kind of brings us into our next topic. Celebrity coaches, and you talk about celebrity coaches, whether it's Pete Carroll, USC, or Nick Saban, or
I don't see Nick Saban as a celebrity coach. Nick Saban's just a football coach. He wasn't out there schmoozing and trying to be a.
Well, I guess celebrity.
He became a celebrity just because of his success.
Right.
But what I would talk about celebrity coaches would be Bill Belichick, Prime Time. Prime Time was fortunate in that he had a great quarterback and the best player in the country that he didn't have to recruit.
That's true too.
They just came with him. And his first year, he won 4 games with those guys. but the best example to me is Belichick, because all anybody could see was 6 Super Bowls. That's all anybody could see. They didn't see 12 and 23 in his last 2 NFL seasons.
Well, and they probably also
12 and 23.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot, and let's not forget he ran off Tom Brady, who went to Tampa for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and then again, you better understand where you are. I mean, now look, everybody to each his or her own. But a 24-year-old girlfriend and he's 73, really? I mean, easily young enough to be his granddaughter. Easily. And that becomes the story.
So Phillip, you mean you're not going to divorce Teresa and go find you a 24-year-old?
No, not that. I think I am missing one. I get shot. Two. I think I'm missing the one thing that makes that possible, which is I don't have a gazillion dollars, and it might be better. Who knows? But when Dion coached, all these stars, all these people came, and Saturday at Monday at North Carolina, all these people came, all coming to see. Like Bill Belichick was going to take whoever happened to be there, all these transfers, all this, and just go out there. And he won the Super Bowl so he can beat anybody in college. Well, there's not that many coaches, head coaches particularly, who have made that move and been successful. Just like there aren't that many that have made the move from college to the NFL and been successful. It's totally different games.
Well, it is, and we had Les Snead on yesterday. He was the GM of the Rams and an Auburn grad, and he was talking about the new GM position in college football, and he said, if I was going to be a GM in college, he said, hell, I wouldn't even know where to start. It's just a completely different animal than the NFL. And,
yes.
And it is.
Yes. I mean, it's just it's completely different. But the thing is, they look ill prepared. They look, and he's, if you're going to be a college head coach, you got to be the face of the program. You need to make people love you. And to an extent, you better be honest. The intelligent thing for Bill Belichick to have done would have been, wait a minute now. We can't let expectations get out of control. We got a lot of work to do here. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't care.
Well, and it's only one. If you really look at the contract, the buyout drops dramatically after the season. So it's really, if he wants to and he gets an opportunity to go back to the NFL, I don't think anybody doubts that he took the North Carolina job because he thought he wasn't going to get an NFL gig. And so, if he gets a chance at the NFL again next year, he's leaving. I mean, if I remember right, I think the buyout.
Well, why would you hire him, Ryan?
Well, I think that it was forced on the AD and some boosters thought.
No, but I mean, if you're an NFL team, why would you hire him?
I wouldn't. I mean, he
has, without Tom Brady, he has a losing record. After they ran Tom Brady off, they were terrible.
And again, I don't want to. Here's the thing. I think that, and all that's true, and I agree that he's fallen off a cliff. But I also I don't want to move on to our next topic until. I do think Belichick deserves an immense amount of credit for managing that roster for all those years, whether it's managing the egos in the area.
I'm not saying he had nothing to do with it. I'm not saying that at all. But I've never laid eyes on the guy, so I have no idea what he's like. But
he makes Nick look happy.
Yes, for sure. Even when they looked great on their first drive Monday, he still looked like it's over there puckered up and like, he wouldn't even smile. And then after that, he didn't have anything to smile about. But to get beat like that, and I know Texas A&M is a veteran team, and I was really impressed with their quarterback. But TCU's not Ohio State or Georgia or whoever, and to just get manhandled like that, I mean, just absolutely manhandled. That's all those people that came didn't come to see him get blown out.
No, he brought his son as a defensive coordinator, and which is, his son has worked with him at the Patriots, and then he was at Washington.
Yeah,
that's right. And then of course he's got Freddie Kitchens as the offensive coordinator. But it's hard. They had 70 new players. You bring in 70 guys, I don't give a damn where you're coaching. I mean, you bring 70 new guys in, and this is their first game together.
Oh yeah,
they're not going to be very good.
No doubt. But they didn't look like they were all that. They didn't look all that talented either.
No.
I mean, I didn't see a player that it's going to be interesting to see what they do, because their best player Saturday was Max Johnson.
Yeah.
They actually looked like they could do something when he was in there.
Mm-hmm.
The quarterback of South Alabama, after that first drive, they got after him and he wilted.
For sure.
And it'll be interesting to see, but I'm uncomfortable with it. The whole when Pete Carroll was at USC and all the movie stars were there, and I don't think when he first went there, I don't think it was that.
It wasn't. He didn't even. USC had fallen off a cliff. If you remember they couldn't get anybody to take the job. He kept hanging around, and finally, they're like, okay, well, he'd been a twice failed coach in the NFL, and
when Auburn played them in 2003 at Jordan-Hare Stadium, and this keeps happening in Auburn. I don't know why. I mean, they had like 7 straight seasons when they didn't win more than 6 games. So you schedule USC, you say that's great. It's USC, but they're not any good. Right. And that was Pete Carroll's second season. They went, I think, 6-6 his first season.
Yeah, I believe so.
But the reason I say it wasn't like that yet then, because Auburn's playing the next year. I think it's the next year. Anyway, Auburn's playing at USC in 2000 and I'm getting my year. They played at USC in 2002 and lost 24-17, and then they lost at Auburn 23-0. And so in 2001 was Carroll's first year, and they had not been good. So this is a big deal. Auburn's going to play in Los Angeles Coliseum and all that. So I'm trying to do some special stuff for the Huntsville Times, and so I said I'm going to try to get in touch with Pete Carroll. So I called the media relations office, and they said, "Well, just call his office; they'll get something set up." So I called his office and told her who I was, and said, "Whenever it's convenient for Coach Carroll, I'd like to talk to him." And she said, "Well, he's sitting in there right now. You want to talk to him now?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And we talked. We talked for a long time, and he was just as nice as he could be, and it wasn't any great pretense or anything. And he thought he could win by basically walling off the area around Los Angeles and the areas around it, that he thought he could recruit well enough there to win. And it was a really enjoyable conversation. But I'll bet you 2 or 3 years later, I couldn't have just called his office and they said, "Oh yeah, he's sitting here right now. You want to talk to him?" I bet that wouldn't have happened. Because all of a sudden, once they got good, all these movie stars and all this stuff were part of it.
The other part of that is that if you remember, there was no NFL team in LA at that point. You had the Chargers in San Diego, you had the Rams in St. Louis, and so USC and UCLA was awful. So you had USC was a de facto NFL team for the
Right.
the nation's second largest city.
I get uncomfortable, and I've written about this. And in basketball, I think too much of the spotlight is on the coaches. But at least the coaches in basketball, they're involved in everything during the game. I mean, but I just think when the coach becomes the story and the players become like bit players, like, and the coach is the star, I'm not comfortable with that. I mean, it's the players that are making whatever happens. So, but
Yeah,
maybe that's because I'm old too. I don't know, but I know this. Bill Belichick is 73 years old. I'm 75 years old. I don't believe, even if I had the expertise, I don't believe I could build a football program from the ground up right now.
Yeah, you talk about Pete Carroll's first year. He gets out there, and I'm talking to the operations guy, and they're looking to hire a recruiting coordinator. And I had left LSU and was missing football, and I'd already turned down a job at Arizona because I thought I was going to USC. And ops guy calls, and he's like, "Hey, you're the guy." He's like, "I just need you to come out here Monday and meet with the head coach, Pete Carroll." He said, "I'll call you Friday with your flight information, and we'll see you Monday. He said, "I'll pick you up at the airport." I said, "Okay." Well, I don't hear anything Friday. I don't hear anything Saturday. I don't hear anything Sunday. And he finally calls me on Monday, and he says, "Hey, man," he said, "I apologize." He said, "Pete went out and hired one of his buddy's friends who's completely unqualified." I'm sorry, one of his buddy's sons who is completely unqualified. He said, "If it's up to me, you'd already be out here." But so anyway, I ended up going to Florida, and I met my wife, so I guess it worked out. But
there you go. But maybe it'll work for Belichick. I don't believe it will.
I don't either. If you look at when even guys like Bill Walsh, when he retired from 49ers and ended up going back to Stanford, it didn't work, and it's a difficult, especially now, even more so than it ever has been.
Right.
Auburn and Alabama will both have advertisements painted on the field Saturday.
Who would have thought it?
Who would have thought it?
Yeah, when we wrote the story about Great Southern Woods, going to have a thing on at Jordan-Hare Stadium. I didn't know the whole story. I have since found out that, and I should have. It should have registered with me because Jimmy Rain told me that we decided that we could do this, and basically what happened was that somebody was going to do it. There was going to be an ad on that stadium, on that field, whether it was Great Southern Wood or somebody else. Somebody was going to do it. And so he decided because he actually doesn't like it. He doesn't like the idea of advertisements on the field at Jordan-Hare Stadium. In his words, that's sacred ground. But it was something was going to be there. So he decided that it would be an opportunity that they could do it, and he could honor Coach Dye, who you'd have a hard time finding any man that loves another man any more than Jimmy Rain loves Pat Dye. And so in Alabama, I forget exactly what the deal is. They're trying to couch it as it's a partnership, not something. But anyway, somebody is paying to have something put on the field at Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Yes.
And but hey, I understand it. I don't like it, but I understand it. All these schools, they got to have more. They got to have more income streams that last. Mm-hmm. Because you say okay, you got to pay them. You don't have to, but you will if you're in the SEC. $20.5 million revenue sharing, and that's going to go up every year. Yep. But that's not enough because everybody's doing that. So you better have some more money, NIL money, third party NIL, whatever. And And the thing about it is that then you got to start over every year. Let's say you raise $20 million this year. Well, that's great. And then you spend it. Then you got to go raise it again next year. That's why it just seems to me at some point there's got to be a breaking point somewhere.
I mean, you would think, I also think
wealthy people get tired of giving their money away. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. I think you're 100% right. And I think the other thing is these football staffs have become very, very top heavy. I mean, not from a coaching standpoint, but from a support staff. I mean, look, I worked intern, but with two NFL staffs. I know, or two NFL franchises. I know people in the NFL, and there's some of those people are just shocked at how much money, manpower, everything else is spent in college athletics and college football in particular. And I mean, the NFL has full scouting staffs that aren't as big as some of these colleges.
It's amazing, especially if you have watched somebody like me that remembers when the entire Auburn athletic department was located at Beardee's Memorial Coliseum, and football coaches were in small offices that had enough room. It was two coaches to an office, and you had two desks, and in the middle you had a projector, and you had a screen on the wall. That was it. And it was not there weren't any general managers or heck, there really wasn't GAs but the support staff. I mean, you had the AD and all that, of course, but even it's not just football. How many people work for the AD now and scouting and all this stuff, and somebody to deal with. Because Hugh Freeze told me when I did an interview with him several weeks ago that he said I had to get out of it. I had to just say these guys are going to handle that, and he said because it was about to drive me crazy. He said, "Come in here and you see people lined up, won't talk about money." He said, and he said I sent them now to Redmond and those guys, and he said, I told them I think it said spring. I think it was first day of spring practice. He said, I told them the first day of spring practice that there might be an expensive racehorse and one that's not as expensive, but I get to decide which horse runs. And it's not going to have anything to do with that. But then you got, let's just say you're Auburn, and everybody knows that Deuce Knight has everything it takes to play for a long time. Mm-hmm. I mean, he is extremely talented. Well, that won't be a problem if Jackson Arnold has a great year and goes to the NFL next year. Mm-hmm. But what if he comes back? Then that's a potential problem. Well, you're probably going to have to pay out the yin yang for a backup quarterback.
But the other issue is, that's where recruiting the right type of kid.
Yeah, and he is that. Deuce Knight is that, by the way. There's no doubt about that.
But I mean, if you bring in guys who have transferred 3 or 4 times, and you've got to do the background. That's one thing Nick Saban was really, really good at, even way prior to NIL. You've got to evaluate not only, football talent, athletic talent, but you've got to evaluate, okay, how's this guy in the classroom? What's his family? What are his family issues? Does he have any mental illness? Does he have any learning disabilities? Can he play? What kind of guy is he in the locker room? Does he want to get a degree? And if you can answer all those questions and you bring in the right type of guy, then you don't end up with a lot of the other issues.
Yeah, well, it's Hugh Freeze calls it speed dating because you don't get. Jackson Arnold's daddy told me, so we really only wanted to take one visit after transferring from Oklahoma. He said, we didn't want to get into going all over the place. And what you better do, and I think this gets back to all these people they got, and I think ones who are successful do this, you start looking into guys early that you think there's a good chance they'll go in the portal before they ever go, or before you, and they may not go. But you by the time they do, you better know something about them.
Well, and there are a lot of places, and I'm not, look, and it goes on in every conference all across the country. Even the kids that aren't planning on going into the portal, somebody may be recruiting them to go into the portal.
Well, I was asking you, do you think college coaches actually break rules?
You almost made me cuss on the air. But I think our time is up for today, and we thank you for yours.
Enjoyed it as always.
And for those listening, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again here next week.